Friday the 13th Part 2 was directed by Steve Miner and released in 1981, taking place 5 years after the events of the first film, at a counselor training camp, set up at the infamous Camp Crystal Lake, as the new group of teens are slaughtered by a mysterious masked killer who lives in the woods. If you haven't already seen my review on the first Friday the 13th, check that out here. Now let's discuss the positives of this movie. Right off the bat, this movie begins with Alice, who had survived Mrs. Voorhees' killing spree in Part 1, being stabbed in the head with a screwdriver. This was a pretty ballsy move that sets up the introduction of a new set of victims, and most importantly, a new final girl, while also giving closure to the character of Alice. This new batch of characters that stay at the newly opened Packanack Lodge training facility next to Camp Crystal Lake are written much better than the first film's characters, with more realistic interactions and depth, making them much more enjoyable to watch, especially Ginny, the final girl. Ginny is played by Amy Steele and is the best character in this movie. She is an aspiring child psychologist who utilizes this in the third act to distract Jason by pretending to be his mother and putting up a great fight against Jason Voorhees throughout the film. Friday the 13th Part 2 marks the first appearance of adult Jason Voorhees. He is portrayed as a human living in a creepy shack in the woods, killing anyone he encounters to avenge his mother's death.
And if you listen to the old timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there. Some sort of demented creature. Surviving in the wilderness. Full grown by now. Stalking. Stealing what he needs. Living off wild animals and vegetation.
Making this realistic version of Jason much more interesting than the zombified killing machine that he devolves into in the sequels. Although Tom Savini didn't return to do the special effects for this movie, the kills are still well done and creative enough to stand out, especially Mark's death scene. Additionally, Part 2 is easier to digest due to its much more tighter pacing, cutting out a lot of the scenes that drag. Harry Manfredini returned to score Part 2, giving it the same creepy tone and atmosphere that the first one nailed, along with some returning locations and characters like Crazy Ralph work in this film's favour, making Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2 feel like a good double feature. Now let's discuss the negatives. There are some plot holes that are left unanswered, like where was Jason during the first movie, and how did he survive drowning as a kid? Part 2's ending was solid, with Jason grabbing Ginny through the window, leaving her fate unanswered, but that gets ruined by forcing it to become a cheesy dream sequence, which just undermines the shocking scene that came prior for no reason at all. In summary, this movie has a forced ending, some plot holes, and a couple repetitive scenes, but it is still better than Part 1 due to its interesting characters, cool death scene, returning vibe, new villain, and complex final girl, earning Friday the 13th Part 2 a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks a lot for watching. My next review will be on
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
You are all my children now.
Freddy's Revenge.